Hey everyone, it's John Heath here again for Milton Rose Learning with another Let's Learn video on the poem London by William Blake. So we're going to kind of into the real kind of dark heart of the UK at the time with the Industrial Revolution. So we're going to look at some of the key contexts, the history and the social stuff that you need to know for this poem. Then we'll have a little poetry reading. It's only a short one, so we'll whiz through that. And then we will wrap up with some of the key anchor annotations, which will be very good to get down into your anthologies. Okay, so first off, let's look at the history and the social sides of the context. Now, as you can see, you've got William Blake there looking pretty displeased, and it is an angry poem. He really hates what London has become in this time. And you have a very interesting image there of the Industrial Revolution, which we're going to explain now. So first off then, let's have a look at the Industrial Revolution. So this poem was written during the late 18th century. So the poem reflects the very, very grim realities of London amidst rapid industrial growth. So we were basically building factories everywhere in London. And it was creating urban poverty because the peasants from the fields were coming in to work into these factories in horrible conditions, I must say, and social inequality was starting to rapidly increase. So you had these capitalists at the top, these fat cats who owned all the factories and making all the money, and then you had the poor kind of factory workers who were living in misery basically and working for a few pennies every day. So it was widening social inequality, and the Industrial Revolution was particularly hated by the Romantic poets. Then we have a critique of social injustice. So Blake condemns the corruption, the oppression, and the suffering caused by institutions which should know better, like the government, the church, and the monarchy. He would argue that they were part of the problem in this period and they weren't doing enough to help the working class and to help the kind of factory workers and things like that, and they needed to reform themselves. Okay, the Romantics were actually very, very political, and it shows in this poem. Okay, the last one is piece of context is Romanticism and human rights. Now, as a Romantic poet, Blake emphasised emotion and individual experience. He uses London then almost as a metaphor to call attention to the need for social and moral reform in Britain at that time. Okay, he wants Britain to be better in many, many different ways, and the Romantics wanted to return to a purer age before all of this industrialisation. Okay, so there's a lot going on there. You want to research a little bit that in a little bit more detail to flesh that out, but that should have provided a beginner's guide. Then, shall we read? We'll do a bit of a poetry reading of the poem. Now you can see it's only 4 stanzas. It's fairly short, and you can see in those images what London life was like in this period. It was pretty grim stuff. So we can get all this poem all in one go, I think. So let's just have a nice little look at it. Okay, so this is William Blake's London. Let's have a read. I wandered through each chartered street near where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. So he's saying I'm wandering down the River Thames in London and I'm looking in everyone's face and nobody's happy. They are all kind of struggling with life. In every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every band, the mind-forged manacles I hear. So, lovely phrase, the mind-forged manacles, meaning basically that the people were kind of downtrodden, but it's because of all of the false ideas that were put into their head by institutions like the church and by the government, which kept them in their place. Okay, let's finish the poem off then. How the chimney-sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. But most through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlots, those who are basically prostitutes, curse, blast the newborn infant's tear, and blights with plagues the marriage hearse. So he's basically saying that everybody was kind of playing around, kind of sexually, and they weren't taking the marriage vows kind of seriously, and morality and the old religious kind of certainties were dying away here. We weren't very acting in a very moral way. You can tell though the poem is extremely angry, very, very aggressive, and wants to make London better. He wants to try and build a better world, very idealistic in some ways. So let's have a nice look now at some of the key annotations to go into your anthology. Now, these are not exhaustive. I'm not giving you every single annotation because I'm sure you're clever enough you can pull out your own, but these provide some really good anchors for your notes in your anthology. So let's have a look. The opening image. I wandered through each chartered street near where the chartered Thames does flow, and you can see in the picture there it wouldn't have looked much different from that in this period. So the speaker's movement, I wonder, it's a tone of aimless despair. He's just wandering around because it's so awful he can't even focus on where he needs to go, and he's trapped within the city's kind of stifling structures and the smog as well, which must have come from all the factories. Chartered as well, that means hired. It's the repetition of chartered shows the loss of freedom. Even natural features like the Thames now are controlled by law and commerce. Okay, the ships which were running for business, which were transporting all of the factory goods around, the natural world symbolised by the Thames has been taken over now by business and commerce. Okay, and he doesn't see that as a positive thing. The second thing I would focus on, the voices of the people. In every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear. And look at that image there as well. It was kind of like absolutely horrendous, wasn't it? So the repetition of every stresses the universality of suffering across all ages and classes, apart from the aristocracy probably. So everybody is suffering in London here. None of the institutions are working, and nothing is kind of being nothing is being done properly. There's not good governance here anymore. It's a real shame, and London is crumbling. The infant's cry, that phrase there as well, is a symbol of innocence. It's corrupted by an oppressive society, and it reinforces Blake's critique of institutional cruelty. It's a great phrase for your essays. An institution like the government or the church, it's basically saying they're not doing their jobs properly and they are hurting society as a whole. This is institutional cruelty. Very, very powerful phrase there. Then another phrase, another line that shows the marks of suffering. Mark in every face I meet, marks of weakness, marks of woe. So the marks, it has a double meaning. It's kind of visible signs of misery, but also the metaphorical mark of oppression, which is left by social injustice. So you can kind of analyse it both ways there. I think that would be kind of analysed very, very nicely. Also, the alliteration of weakness and woe. So it emphasises the weight of human suffering, linking individuals to collective pain. I'd definitely pull out that alliteration. I think that could be analysed very, very nicely. And then finally, the corruption of institutions. So how the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls. So the chimney sweeps were normally children in this period, so that it's a symbol of exploitation and industrial cruelty. And the blackening church, the church is being blackened literally by the smog from the factories, but also it's a symbol of moral corruption, like a black heart. So he's accusing religion of failing to protect the vulnerable there as well. Okay, so it was a bit of a misery march, wasn't it, through London there? But hopefully that's been a really useful beginner's guide for this poem. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss another Let's Learn video again. Feel free to pop any comments in and we'll always do our best to reply as well. So it just remains to say, obviously, thanks for listening and take care. We'll see you soon.